Welcome to the Ask Faleskini Podcast with a guest. I'm proud to present Chris Maduri. Chris, welcome to the show. Please tell us more about yourself. What is your story?
Thank you for having me on. I am, most importantly, a child of God, father, husband, and my day-to-day job, I help people plan for, visualize, and get comfortable with retirement and financial planning.
Amazing. So, a lot of people, when they get aware that they are already in their midlife, start thinking about retirement and
Yeah.
they think about all the decisions they have taken in the past and were not the best one, and they think about what is their current situation and they're not too pleased about it. So how would you go about it? How would you put a, let's say, optimistic spin on uh, a fear of retirement being part of our midlife crisis?
Yeah, that's definitely a big topic when it comes to retirement and the timing of the midlife crisis. And we always feel like we're underprepared for everything, right? No matter what it is that we're doing. And it's just life to me is just a series of choices, and our choices kind of bring on other choices. So it's never too late, it's never too early, but for folks in their midlife, they shouldn't feel like they're behind. It's a good time to start. And if your daily choices are not in line with retirement planning or someday stopping working, then it's just time to think about it and to get comfortable with it and, kind of put the plan together, right? I think it all starts with the plan. That to me is the way to go.
Amazing. So what would you say to an average American earning 80,000 a year? Where should they start thinking about retirement? What should be their first thought or the first step to take? Should they go for a 401k? Should they go for IRA account? What is the direction that they should start exploring in? Let's call it like this.
Yeah, it's hard to give general advice, but for somebody making that money, um, the next question out of my mouth would be, how much are you spending? Because it's not what you make, it's what you keep, right? So if all of that money is accounted for, then we have to find ways to um, first visualize and understand what we want in retirement. I think that is absolutely critical. And then go from there to, retirement to me is about income and it's about risk mitigation. So where we're going to allocate assets are going to be consistent with providing income, right? So, I do a lot with annuities and, looking at how much guaranteed income someone has for retirement. My feeling is that guaranteed expenses need to have guaranteed income tied to them in order for somebody to be comfortable with it. A lot of times, I think people are looking at it as this accumulation of assets, and we never feel like we have enough, right? So it's how much money are you going to spend in retirement, right? Because once you have enough money coming in to pay your bills, theoretically, you could retire, right? The more of a cushion there is, the easier it's going to be. And then it comes down to like risk mitigation. So are you taking care of yourself, right? Do you have longevity in your family? Um, how long that retirement's going to last is going to determine whether we have enough money, right? If you're going to pass away 3 months after you retire, probably don't need a real big plan for that. But, we try to keep it so that it's, I think nowadays you kind of have to look at it as 25, 30 years of a potential retirement. And if we're underprepared for that, then maybe it means we're going to work a little bit longer. Maybe it means that instead of turning it on and turning it off, maybe we're doing something part-time, right? Or finding some other ways to keep income coming in. But it's once you start spending down those assets, the more of a plan that you have for it and the more guarantees, I think the better off you're going to be.
Okay, I would like to address some, let's say, societal induced principles, and I don't believe they're true anymore. But I would like to have your opinion on it because you said that we have to visualize what we want. And in the 80s, it used to be like you if you have $1 million on your bank account, and if they give you 12% interest, you're set for life. That was
Right.
the story in the 80s that they told. Now you probably need about 4 million to do this. So, but not to have bigger income because in the 80s you would have 120,000, but now for the 120,000 you need 4 million probably.
Yeah.
And if we multiply that by four, so that the purchase power per unity of 120,000 in the 80s, it would probably be we would need like in a range of 16 millions right now. So what's your so how do you see this? What's like $1 million man, $1 million question, all this stuff, it's still $1 million, and the inflation is so far gone beyond what we have ever imagined even 20 years ago. So what is the so if we want to keep our standards as we have it now, for example, if we spend
Yeah.
60,000 a year on an 80,000 income, uh, how much money should we have saved, or how much should we have invested in? You talk about annuities, and so the probably bonds and similar papers. What's your plan? So an average American right now, how much assets should they have? We're talking minimum risk, not uh, property and leverage property and stuff like that, but minimum risk, non-leveraged. How much money should we save for, um, let's say, uh, mediocre retirement?
Yeah, again, it's tough to put an actual dollar amount on it, and there's different approaches that you can take to spending in retirement. If you were going to go that route of 60/40 portfolio, and there's a lot of debate to your point. Like, is it 4%? Is it 3%? Is it 5%? Like, how much can we spend down? You first need to know how much you're going to plan to spend, right? Because if someone's going to spend $50,000 a year in retirement, or someone's going to spend $150,000, we're going to come away with two very different numbers, right? So, from a percentage of assets standpoint, now I think a lot of people are looking at 3 to 4% as their safe withdrawal rate.
Mhm.
Um, that's that's going to create some big numbers, right? If it went to your point, if you're looking at that over the span of 25 or 30 years, and then you want to factor in maybe somebody has a long-term care event, something like that, which really takes a big hit on the portfolio. I think the income streams, especially now, with interest rates being so high and converting a portion of that into guaranteed income is going to take a lot of that pain away, right? Because right now, let's say a 65-year-old, if they had looking for immediate income, you can buy an annuity and get a 7%, 8% distribution rate that's guaranteed for the rest of your life, right? So you tack that on top of Social Security. Maybe they have a pension. I know those are kind of going away, but still have, teachers, government workers, there's still a lot of pensions that are out there. Um, and you really kind of add it up to create that income stream, right? So ideally, you would have income on one side, saving and accumulating assets and keeping those assets invested is important. Um, Social Security does have cost of living increases. Annuities can, but it gets actually very costly. So, ideally, if you're kind of have that equity side that's meant to combat inflation, um, that money, if it's sitting there and it can grow and it can weather the storms, then you kind of use that for accumulation protection. And then, you have these silos of income that are being used to pay the bills. because if that income's coming in the door, then it's not really similar to what it was when you were working, right? You had a paycheck, you had a budget, and you had the money coming in and those offsets. So again, going back to that guaranteed income for guaranteed expenses, that's going to take a lot of the pressure off and is going to provide a lot of peace of mind for folks. Um, when it comes to doing the income planning with annuities, the longer you give it to cook, the better off it's going to be, right? So, that same 8% payout, if the person was 55 years old and then waited to 65 to start, that's going to be looking more like a 15, 16% payout. So, a much smaller percentage of your assets have to be committed towards it. And the more tactical we can get as to what are these assets supposed to be doing for us, right? This annuity is meant to provide income. This brokerage account is really not meant to be tapped into unless it's for a purchase that's not, not using it to pay your electric bill, right? Maybe you're using that to go on a cruise, or maybe you want to contribute to your grandkids 529 or something like that. And if those assets can sit there, like I said, weather the storm, that's going to be, it's going to take a lot more pressure off the rest of the portfolio. And that's what we're, kind of looking to do.
Okay, so where should our listeners start? Who should they consult first? Where do you come into play?
Um, yeah, so I do, financial and retirement planning. I focus on more on the annuities, life, and long-term care side. I partner with folks that do deal more with like the money management, asset management side. Um, my personal feeling is that the more specialized you can get, right? Rather than being jack of all trades, master of none. I'm a big fan of partnerships so that the people there are very specific and focused on what their individual goals are. So a good financial planner is a good place to start. Um, Sitting down with someone, getting clear about what you want in retirement, how much money you need in retirement. Um, and we're dealing a lot with the financial side. There's a whole nother piece of this is that psychological and emotional side of retirement. Um, I think the first conversation needs to be with the spouse, right? If you're married, to make sure that we're on the same page as to what we want in retirement. And then financial planner, depending on how large your estate is and what your goals are, maybe estate planners come in, a lawyer for someone like that. But if you're talking about the individual that's concerned about, will I have enough money for retirement? A good financial planner is a good place to start.
When should we do that? Is that is there
Mm.
like an end time? Like you should do it by the year that you're 50 years old, or is there anything like that?
Um, I think the sooner the better
Mhm.
is always the case, right? This way, um, even if you're not planning necessarily just for the retirement, but just to keep your money invested. If some people want to invest their own money, that's great. Some people want to use a third party for that. I would say by the time you're, 40 or 50, you probably want to have at least an interaction with a financial planner for planning purposes, right? Just to make sure that you're on target or at least have things going in the right direction.
Amazing. So can you tell us a bit more about, of course, not the details, but about your portfolio? How did you decide what to do? In general terms, of course. We not, don't want any personal data or something like that. But
Yeah.
what was your motivation, and how did you approach it?
For my own individual investing.
Yes.
Yeah, so that I am more conservative in nature
Hmm.
and a big fan of balance, right? So I'm 47, couple weeks, going to be 48 years old. And, this is the time where I'm starting to shift to really start thinking about retirement and making sure that some of the dollars I have four kids. They're going to be going to college starting in 2 years, right? So making sure that we have money saved for their college, making sure that we have protection in place in case, the unthinkable happens and either my wife or I, were to pass away. Um, so want to make sure that we have the balance there. Um, Using more, equities for growth. At this point, we are in a position where we're not the conservative stuff is really specific to our retirement. So we'll use a deferred income annuity, for example, and kind of throw money into that, which is going to kick off an income stream whenever we retire. That we would use for kind of where a lot of people might use the bond portion of their portfolio, um, and then equities for growth. I'm not personally like a cyber crypto type guy, although a lot of people have done very well with it. To me, it's just something that I don't, understand and not a place for me to put money. But for others, I think that's a part of their portfolio. And those more aggressive pieces when you're younger, you could take those big swings, right? It's more as I get closer and closer to retirement, I want to make sure that there's guarantees in place. I'm not going to pull the money under a mattress or something like that, right? Because I do need the equities for growth. But what I refer to as like the retirement risk zone, 5 years prior to retirement and the first 5 years of retirement, that money that I'm going to spend, I want to make sure that it's not going to be subject to some big, market loss, right? If you've heard the term sequence of return risk, that is a risk that is really specific to retirement because there's no sequence of return risk when you're 30 years old because the markets go down and the markets are going to recover. Your money, you're not going to need the money right at that time. So where sequence of return risk comes in is that let's say you start withdrawing that money and you have a 2008 happens, right? Now 40% of your portfolio is gone and you started taking money out of it. That money can't grow back because you've already spent it, right? So those are the types of things where we go, all right, we need to protect those assets. And if those assets are protected, then you have a little bit more flexibility on the other, right? You can still be invested in equities because you're not touching that money right now, right? So we want to get specific and say these assets are doing X, these assets are doing Y, these assets are doing Z, right? And the more specific we get, the greater the peace of mind that we can have. So over the next 15 years, we're probably going to be kicking more money into that deferred income annuity so that our income stream, when we turn it on, is ready to go. We know exactly how much money we have to spend in retirement, and we can be really comfortable spending in retirement. Does that make sense?
Yep. Uh, what about the um, how long should we invest for? For example, you have 20 years bond from the US. Is that something we should consider at 50 years old or not?
An individual bond. It depends on what you're
Yeah.
you're looking to do with it and what your goals are for it. For some people, they'll take that bond and they'll use the interest and just kind of pull that off as income. Where you're holding a specific bond. Um, you have those that are going to be a little bit, if you're using a U.S. government bond, lower risk versus whether it be a corporate bond, where you have the ratings and stuff like that. You have bond funds as well, right? And you have money managers that are using those. Um, so it really depends on the individual's goals. But yeah, a 20-year or a treasury bond is thought to be, a pretty low risk investment. So, yeah, and it depends on again, on the individual and from a tax standpoint, what their taxes are going to look like in retirement as well. We would want to consider those.
Okay. So to wrap things up, there's no better way to do it and no better time than now. It would be better if we would start 10 years ago, but if we are experiencing midlife crisis, and a part of it is we don't know how we're gonna retire. We just talk to the expert. Is that correct?
Yeah, get help, right? I think with anything in life, when you're going through something and you have concerns, then seek out somebody that is trustworthy, knowledgeable, and can help point you on the right path, from finances for whatever it is that you're going through, and just know that you can't undo the past, right? The only moment that really matters is the present, right? And making sure that we're making choices in the present that are going to give us the future that we want.
Chris, thank you for all these insights. Before I let you go, please tell us where can our listeners get in touch with you?
Yeah. So the best way is through my website, vibrantretirement.com. You'll have all of my contact information on there, all of my social media and everything like that. Feel free to message me on there as well. Um, yeah, phone number, whatever it is, feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you again for being my guest tonight.
Thank you so much, Peter. I appreciate the time.